Welcome to the third and final session that makes up this National Academy's workshop on indoor exposure to fine particulate matter and practical mitigation approaches. My name is Richard Corsi. I'm the Dean of the Massey College of Engineering and Computer Science at Portland State University, and I'm honored to serve as chair of the committee that helped to plan this workshop series, and I'll acknowledge other members of the committee shortly. But first, some housekeeping. This is an open, on-the-record session. Observers will not have audio or video access, but you can participate using the Ask Your Question field at the bottom of the video link. Videos of the speakers' presentations and roundtable discussions will be available via links on the page you're accessing today, and will be posted here in about 2 weeks or so. Over the past 2 weeks, we've had an outstanding group of speakers who have discussed outdoor sources of fine particulate matter, transport of fine particles through the building envelope, indoor sources of fine particulate matter, processes that lead to the transformation of indoor particles, our exposure to those particles, health effects associated with those exposures, and assessments and metrics that we can use to better understand all of that, including the health effects. So a few words about the topic we're covering in this workshop, and specifically the topics to be covered today. There is overwhelming scientific evidence that increases in levels of outdoor fine particulate matter is associated with a range of short-term and chronic health impacts, including asthma exacerbation, acute and chronic bronchitis, heart attacks, increased susceptibility to respiratory infections, premature deaths, and more. And the burden of these health effects is greater for underserved and marginalized communities. We also know that roughly half or more of our exposure to fine particulate matter of outdoor origin actually occurs indoors. And the burden of fine particulate matter that is generated from indoor sources is added to that of the fine particulate matter of outdoor origin. How do we reduce our exposure to and health effects associated with fine particulate matter in buildings? How do the decisions that building occupants make in their homes or teachers make in their classrooms affect exposure to fine particulate matter? To what extent can filters in mechanical systems or standalone air cleaners reduce exposure to fine particulate matter and its health effects indoors? These are very important questions that we'll begin to address today, but that we'll continue to need more research on in the future. Today, we have an all-star lineup of speakers who will focus on mitigation of exposure to indoor fine particulate matter, PM 2.5. The selection of speakers and the design of the workshop topics and flows was made possible by the enthusiastic, focused, and sometimes exhausting efforts of many outstanding scholars and colleagues who collectively served as the planning committee for this workshop. I want to acknowledge them right now before we get started. So they're Dr. Seema Bangar, Senior Indoor Air Quality Manager with WeWork, Dr. Renji Chan, Research Scientist and Deputy Indoor Environment Group Leader with the Energy Analysis and Environmental Impact Division at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, Dr. Linda McCauley, Dean of the Nell Hodgson Woodruff School of Nursing at Emory University, Dr. Elizabeth Matsui, who's the Professor of Population Health and Pediatrics and the Associate Director of Health Transformation Research Institute at the University of Texas at Austin's Dell Medical School, Dr. Kimberly Prather, a Distinguished Professor at Scripps Institution of Oceanography and UC San Diego, Dr. David Pui, the Regents Professor and L.M. Fingerson TSI Inc. Chair in Mechanical Engineering at the University of Minnesota, Dr. Jeffrey Siegel, who's a Professor in the Department of Civil and Mineral Engineering at the University of Toronto, and Dr. Marina Vance, who's an Assistant Professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering and in the Program of Environmental Engineering at the University of Colorado at Boulder. This series of workshop sessions is sponsored by the United States Environmental Protection Agency's Office of Radiation and Indoor Air. I want to thank Laura Kalb of the Indoor Environments Division for providing the committee with its statement and task, and special thanks to Jonathan Edwards, who's the Director of the Office of Radiation and Indoor Air, for his support for this workshop. We would not have gotten to this final workshop session without the outstanding support of the National Academies. In particular, I want to thank Dr. David Butler, the J. Herbert Holloman Scholar of the National Academy of Engineering, for his tremendous support, insights, and actions on behalf of the Planning Committee. And I also want to thank the following staff of the National Academies for their support: Doctors Guru Madhavan, Kathleen Stratton, and Courtney Hill, and Mr. Michael Holzer. Dr. Renji Chan will moderate today's session. It's been a great pleasure to work with Dr. Chan on this workshop planning committee. Dr. Chan is a research scientist with the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, where she has worked for over a decade. She is Deputy Indoor Environment Group Leader in the Energy Analysis and Environmental Impact Division there. Her work focuses on characterizing indoor air quality and implications to human exposures in both residential and commercial buildings. Dr. Chan will be joined by Dr. Seema Bongar. Dr. Bongar is the Senior Indoor Air Quality Manager at WeWork. Her focus is on driving the use of new science and technology for designing, building, and operating buildings that are better for health, productivity, and the planet. So I now hand the reins over to Renji to moderate today's session on mitigation of exposure to indoor fine particulate matter. Renji, the virtual floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Rich, for the introduction and acknowledgement. It's my first time being part of the National Academy's workshop. And I know some of the speakers will be speaking today, so it's my honor to serve as your moderator. I'm gonna have two sections. The section one is on indoor PM exposure control and mitigation, where we have presentations on using filtration in homes and schools, and also source control for PM emitted from cooking. The section two will be on occupant responses to indoor PM, where the focus is on how to bring control and mitigation into practices, considering human behavior and public health. Our sections are structured where there are 3 presentations, and then after the 3 presentations, we'll have time for a moderated roundtable discussions, where we'll be bringing all 3 speakers back to answer questions from the audience and also questions from our community members. We encourage questions from the audience, so you can submit your question using the chat function in Zoom. Just a reminder to focus your question really around the presentation and about the topics that we will be talking today.